All right, everybody, welcome to Ever Vigilant Podcast. My name's Joe Prim, and today we're kind of going to do an experiment. I'm going to try doing the podcast from my commute, and we'll see how this goes. If this works out, it will make it a lot easier for me to do podcasts more frequently. The weekends are jammed-packed, especially this time of year with the homestead and getting things planted and getting things cleaned up from the winter. So if this will work, I should be able to put out podcasts more often. So we'll do a little experiment today. First, we'll do a little update on the homestead. But first, I wanted to say thanks to everybody that listens. I do appreciate it. If you would leave comments or reviews on whatever it is that you listen on, I would really appreciate it. And I appreciate any feedback about the podcast, any suggestions, any ideas for making it better, any suggestions for topics to talk about. I would appreciate it. The email address you can reach me at is evervigilantpodcast@gmail.com. So just a little update on what's going on in the homestead. Temperature's starting to rise. So the trees and bushes are all looking good, starting to open up. We have all the seedlings that we planted for the garden are growing, are in our little greenhouse that we built, and seem to be doing well. We got our turkeys a couple weeks ago. They're doing well. We ordered 5 turkeys, and we lost 3 of them within the first couple days. 2 of them were very sickly right from the get-go. I'm not surprised that they didn't make it. But the third one was actually one of the most active turkeys, and I'll have to accept responsibility for that one passing. I didn't put anything around the brooder. We usually just use a small wading pool for the brooder and, fill it with wood chips and put their water and food in there. But this little guy was so active, somehow he got out of that wading pool, and I hadn't put anything else around it to, build up the height, because I didn't really think there was any possibility of the little guy getting all the way out of there. And it was pretty cold that weekend, and being in the basement, he got too far away from the heat lamp and the heat of the brooder and died. So that was frustrating and disappointing. I figured we would lose the 2, but losing that one of the most active, healthy ones, is just a reminder that life is so fragile, and to make sure that you're doing everything you can to help these little birds start out in their life and make things as least stressful as possible. But I'm still surprised that little guy was able to get out. But lesson learned. I will always make sure that the walls on the wading pool brooder are built up. What I do is I have a loose cardboard that doesn't have the normal. It's not as sturdy as a cardboard box. And what I do is I just wrap that around the brooder, and that's about 3 foot high. So I know that they can't get out of that. But like I said, I hadn't put it on yet. I figured that there was no way for about a week that they'd be able to get out of there. But I made a mistake and won't make that mistake again. The last 2 that we have are looking healthy, looking real good, starting to feather out. So that's kind of fun. We planted 60 raspberry bushes a couple weeks ago. They all came in. We planted them all within the first couple days that they came in. I think 5 or 6 different types of raspberries, some yellow raspberries, and some raspberries that are ever-bearing. So it should be interesting to see. Hopefully some of those pop up and we actually might get a few raspberries yet this year. That would be pretty cool. But we'll see. I was very impressed. I ordered those from, I believe it's called Norse Nurseries. I ordered them online, Nourse Nurseries, I believe, and I was very impressed. They weren't like 1-year-old small rinky-dink raspberry bushes. They actually had a very, very thick and healthy root system on them, and were probably most of them that we planted. The shaft coming out of the ground was probably at least a half inch in diameter. Some of them up to probably 3/4 in diameter. So they were older plants. So that makes you feel good when you order something and you're not sure what you're going to get, and you get something that seems like a quality product. So I was impressed by them. The sea berry bushes that we ordered also arrived last Friday, so that was nice. Again, I ordered those from I can't remember the name offhand. We ordered them from Wisconsin, and again, I was very impressed. Definitely not 1 or 2 year old bushes. They seemed very healthy. They had buds on them. Many of them already. Most of them already had buds on them, and full, nice, thick root system. So I was again felt good about where we purchased them from, and felt that a lot of them should survive through this summer and stick around. So we have a few trees that haven't come back yet. We'll see. It's still a little bit early in my area where I'm located, so we'll see. Some of these things might come in a little bit late, but for the most part, everything's looking good and looking healthy. So that's kind of it for the homestead, and I guess we'll move on to the topic for today. I wanted to talk a little bit about comfort and the world that we live in, and how easy everything is, and how I see that negatively affecting our society and our culture right now. I started thinking about this stuff because, at work I'll hear people complain about climbing 1 or 2 flights of stairs, or just simple things that I don't think people thought twice about, 50 plus years ago, but now people regularly complain about the silliest, stupid things. And to me, it's not only just annoying, it's a little frustrating. It's hard to respect people that are so willing to put in, or aren't willing to put in very much effort into anything that they do. So I got to thinking about different examples of things that are so much easier right now than they were for past generations. And you go back 2-3 generations, and those generations to like the rest of our existence here on this planet were different, completely different than the world that we're living in right now. I mean, the last generation and maybe the generation before that started to see some of this stuff, but not like we have it today. We have instant GPS on our phones, or with our Garmin's, or our automobiles actually have GPSs built in now. I think there's a lot of people, an embarrassing amount of people out there who couldn't read a map. And I'm not even talking like finding your way through a forest with a topo map and a compass or something. I'm talking find your way from one street to the next, or find where you are on a map when you have a definite, street intersection that you're on. And that is sad. And I see these skills, or these, boy, I don't think in the past they were even considered skills, but things that people knew how to do that are being completely lost. And I don't think that people are realizing the value of it. Another thing is quick meals. You know, we have meals now, you can pop them in the microwave. I don't know if you call them a meal, but we have food that we can pop in the microwave and heat up and eat it almost instantly. In the past, meal making, not only did it start before you just made the meal, it went all the way back to growing something, to raising something, to being personally invested in what you were going to eat. But it also took time, and it took energy and effort to take care of those that you loved and cared about. And we'll talk more about this later, but there's a reward there that I believe we're missing out on. Another example is a communication, and how easily and quickly we can communicate with people. We can shoot out a text, shoot out an email, send a picture of, is this what you wanted me to pick up, or did you want me to pick up this one? You know, communication is so easy that it's beginning to kind of become cheap. You know, being able to converse and carry on conversations with people is almost a skill of the past. And if you do meet people or spend time with people that can actually know how to hold a conversation and actually converse about something, not only is it rare, but it's considered a great gift. Another thing with communication is, you know, a lot of people are kind of giving credit for the quote, but the quote of, if I had had more time, the letter would be shorter. And when people needed to communicate by typewriter, or further back even with, you know, a quill and ink, you needed to take time and put effort into how you were going to word something, how you were going to communicate your thoughts or feelings with people. And again, like so many other things, you know, we see some of these letters written by World War I or World War II guys, GIs that didn't have a full 12-year education, and they're some of the most eloquent, you know, poetic writings that you could find, because so much thought went into it, and so much, and people knew how to communicate on a piece of paper what was going on in their mind. And there's another skill that we're losing. Entertainment and distraction is everywhere in our world. And if you're not strong enough to fight against it and do what you need to do, you can be totally overwhelmed by it and let it take control of your life. And, you know, in the past, entertainment was reserved for certain occasions and was saved for special times. And I think it's making us less able to entertain ourselves, for one thing, and less able to withstand boredom. It didn't used to be a problem, I don't think, with people. I don't think people complained about being bored. I think people found things to do, or pondered thoughts, or thought about things. And another thing would be that I thought was interesting, that we always have access to, is weather reports. And in the past, people just kind of had to be ready, because you didn't know when there necessarily was a storm coming in a couple days, or you know, up to 8 inches of snow coming next weekend, or things like that. another thing that's caused us to weaken ourselves and become lax is that we do not need to worry the same way that people in the past did about our own personal security. Majority of people feel like the police are a 911 call away and that they will be there to save the day. So there's another example of losing skill or losing mindset or losing the ability to take care of yourself. In the same with medical issues. We figure everything's a phone call away for 911 for an ambulance also, and very few people are skilled even in minor first aid and able to take care of somebody, their child even, if an emergency happens, and first aid is not just a quick phone call away. So I guess my argument is kind of that if by having all these things, is it making us weaker? Are we less resilient and more susceptible to having issues in the future if some of these things go away? And I would say the answer is yes. For me, the answer is resoundingly yes. All of these things are all things that people were proficient with in the past, that they probably wouldn't have even thought of as skills. They were things that people just knew how to do. They were raised to know how to do these things. And if we don't know how to do these basic things, there are a lot of kids out there, teenagers out there now that would have a hard time starting a campfire. If we don't know how to do these things, we are setting ourselves up for bigger issues, I would say, in the future. So another thing I'm looking at too, or thinking about, is if difficulties make us stronger, if, like the old saying goes, if what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, then we've got to be weaker. If you want to use that argument, we've got to be much weaker now, because we have very little in this world, unless you're going through, and what I'm talking about is different than going through a family member that has cancer or dealing with depression in your life or something like that. I'm talking about just the day-to-day, everyday life that in the past was a struggle. It was a struggle to make sure you had food on the table. It was a struggle to make sure you had food stocked up for the winter. It was a struggle to make sure that you had adequate energy to burn for the winter to cook your food and to keep yourself warm. These things were basic things that were part of the everyday struggle that we don't deal with anymore. And I think the other part of this, and I've learned this since we started burning firewood to heat our new home when we moved, is that these things that people used to do that we've tried to start doing with, like heating our house with wood, and the same with growing a garden, is as much work as these things might be, and they might be easy for in our modern culture to look at and say, well, why would you do that when you could get a Nest thermostat and never have to pay any attention to that again? You're missing out on the reward of doing those things. There is something unique, and I never really experienced it before, but when I come home from work in the middle of winter and it's very cold outside, and I still have to go outside and bring in, maybe half a quart of firewood to make sure that things are stocked up for the next day, and for even further, if need be, and it's harder to get outside, there's a different sense of pride and a different sense of attachment that comes with doing those things, because you are physically involved in helping keep your family warm. And I've even talked about this with my wife, and usually I'm the one that brings in the firewood, but in the morning she needs to make sure that there's a fire started and to warm everybody up, or when she comes home from grocery shopping or something like that, she'll need to get a fire going again, which is a very new experience for her. And she agreed with me, and I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe it's just my convoluted way of thinking of being more involved in something and it bringing a pride and feeling it's a reward to it. But she agreed with me that as much of a pain sometimes as it is needing to start a fire when she gets home and it's cold in the house, that it is very rewarding to feel like you are doing something and that involved in it with your family, of keeping them warm. And it's the same thing with having a garden. You know, you hear it all the time, the people that have been gardening for years and years of how rewarding it is and how rewarding it is. And it's easy to write those people off as kind of people that have a green thumb and it's easy for them to do, or they've been doing it for a long time, and to just kind of write off that idea. But I'm starting to learn and starting to realize more and more that no, there is something special to being involved in this stuff. There is something special about raising a chicken, butchering a chicken, and then eating that chicken that you cannot feel any other way. You cannot feel that same connectedness, and you cannot feel that same reward in any other way. There's only one way to do it. So this gets us to, well, what can we do then to change this in ourselves? Number one, I think we got to change our attitude. We need to start looking at things differently. We need to stop complaining about things that our grandparents never would have dreamed about complaining about, or maybe even would have been grateful for. Number two, I think we need to start making things a little bit more difficult on ourselves. And for different people, that's going to mean different things. You know, whether it be go to the gym, or go for a walk, or engaging in conversations with people versus just sending them a text message, making a phone call and engaging in a conversation. You know, like I talked about on opening your ears, not just listening to what you think that person's going to say and moving on from there, but actually listening to what they say and asking questions till you completely understand why what they're saying is important to them. And learning how to have a conversation. It might be fasting. Fasting is a great way to realize how dependent we are always on eating, and eating for comfort, or eating more than we need to eat. Whether you spend that time in prayer or meditating, or you just skip a meal here and there just to prove that you can, it's putting yourself, it's testing yourself, it's pushing yourself a little bit. It might be taking the stairs instead of the elevator at work. It might be writing out a letter to somebody you care about. It might be spending the time to make a very big dinner. There are a lot of ways that I think we can pull ourselves out of the comfort zone, or it might be raising chickens and planting a garden this year. It's not too late to go buy some tomato plants to throw out, even if you just have a small patio. Do it. Don't hold back. Don't make excuses. Go ahead and do it. I guarantee you that if you try these things and try to push yourself and try to get out of what is so comfortable to do and what you normally do, and try to extend yourself, learn something new, push yourself, that you will be happy that you did it. You never hear somebody that started going back to the gym or something, or even just started going to the gym or went for a walk, that said, oh man, I went for a walk today. That was awful. No, everyone's, I went for a walk today. It was nice to get out, at the very least. Because these things are rewarding. These things bring us back to the basics of what it is to be human, of what we were created to be. and do a challenge. Challenge yourself. Challenge your family. Challenge you with your kids to go out and do some of these things. And I guarantee that you will be rewarded for it. That you will feel better about yourself and that you'll feel better about the direction that you're going in. So that's my podcast for this time. Thanks again for listening. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. I hope this experiment works out, being able to do the podcast on my commute. I have a long commute and very little time to do a lot of the other things that I have to do. So if this works out, that would be great. Again, please leave reviews. Any comments, I would really appreciate it. You can hit me up at evervigilantpodcast@gmail.com. I would appreciate hearing from you. Again, don't forget the 3 F's: faith, family, and freedom. God bless. Have a good week.